Son, that waitress took care of me when no one else would. And what she told me before I left that place, it changed everything. He should not have been shouting in that quiet hallway, but he was. The millionaire stood near the window of the nursing home office, his voice low but sharp enough to cut through the still air. His jaw was tight, his suit pressed and perfect, his presence commanding. Across from him sat his father, thin shoulders wrapped in a pale blanket, eyes tired but steady. "I am not confused, Daniel," the old man said softly. "I know exactly what I am saying. That young woman saved me." Daniel's hand trembled against the desk. He had built companies from nothing. He had negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking. But now his own father was speaking about a waitress as if she were the only person in the world who mattered, and Daniel did not understand why. He looked at the hallway. Outside the office, few staff members pretended to focus on their papers. An elderly resident in a wheelchair watched with quiet interest. At the end of the corridor, a young woman in a simple uniform stood still, her hands clasped in front of her apron. She did not look powerful. She looked small, but she was not afraid. Her name was Alina, and she had been the only light in a dark season of Harold Whitmore's life. Months earlier, Harold Whitmore had not looked like the father of a powerful man. He had looked like a forgotten soldier. At 82, his body had grown thin. His hands, once steady enough to guide a rescue team through smoke and falling walls, now shook when he tried to lift a spoon. His back curved from years of carrying heavy gear and heavier memories. Few people in that building knew who he had been. They saw an old man who moved slowly. They did not see the fire captain, who had once run into a burning apartment complex while others ran out. They did not see the young father who had kissed his wife goodbye before night shifts, smelling of smoke and iron. They did not see the medals tucked away in a wooden box, hidden because he believed duty did not need applause. He had lost his wife 5 winters ago. The house had felt too quiet after that. Too large. His son had insisted on the nursing home. It was modern, safe, expensive. Daniel had said it with love, but also with urgency. He had meetings, flights, investors waiting in polished boardrooms. Harold nodded. He did not want to be a burden. The first night in that room had been the longest of his life. The smell of disinfectant filled the air. The hallway lights never truly turned off. The sounds of soft coughing and distant footsteps echoed through the walls. He had stared at the ceiling and felt something he had never allowed himself to feel before, helpless. The nurses were kind but busy. The staff moved quickly from room to room. Food trays came and went. Conversations were short. Then one afternoon, while he sat alone in the dining area, staring at a plate he could barely taste, a soft voice had broken through the silence. "Sir, would you like some fresh tea instead?" He looked up. Alina stood there with a small smile and tired eyes. She was not a nurse. She worked in the attached cafe downstairs, serving visitors and staff. But she had noticed him sitting alone day after day. When she placed the cup in front of him, she did not rush away. She sat. That was all it took. Alina had grown up far from wealth. Her mother had cleaned houses. Her father had passed when she was young. She worked 2 jobs to pay for nursing school at night. The cafe and the nursing home was one of them. She had seen many sons and daughters visit once a month. Some came with flowers. Some came with guilt. Some did not come at all. She had also seen the quiet sadness in the eyes of the residents when the elevator doors closed and footsteps faded. Harold's sadness had been different. It was not anger. It's not self-pity. It was the silence of a man who had spent his life protecting others and did not know how to ask for help. So she did not ask him questions that would make him feel small. She asked him about the weather, about the birds he used to watch from his porch, about the smell of fresh rain on city streets. Slowly, he began to speak. He told her about the night his team pulled a child from a collapsed building. He told her about the fear he never showed his crew. He told her about holding his wife's hand in the hospital before she slipped. Alina listened, not out of duty, out of respect. And respect was something Harold had not felt in a long time. But not everyone. "Prove the nursing home administrator, Mr. Carter. was a man who valued order above all. Rules were rules. Staff were not to spend unnecessary time with residents unless assigned. Efficiency meant profit. Profit meant success. He had noticed Elena sitting with Harold more than once. "This is not part of your job," he told her in a tight voice one afternoon. She lowered her eyes but did not shrink. Kindness should not need a job title. Mr. Carter did not like that. Whispers began. What? The whispers began. Staff members exchanged looks. Some residents noticed that Elena's cafe shifts were shortened, her hours reduced. She was reminded again and again that boundaries must be respected. Harold saw the change. He noticed when she stopped coming upstairs. He noticed when the tea grew cold without her gentle hands to replace it, and one evening, as the sun painted the hallway gold, he struggled from his chair and made his way down to the cafe. Elena stood behind the counter, her eyes surprised too. "See him. You should not be walking alone, Mr. Whitmore," she said softly. He looked at her with a calm that carried decades of storms. "I have walked through fire," he said. "I can walk to thank someone who treated me like a man." The room had grown still. Even Mr. Carter had paused near the office door. Now back in the present, Daniel stood in that same hallway, his heart racing. He had come because he received a message. From his father, a short one. "Come see me. I have something important to tell you." Daniel had assumed it was about medical bills or discomfort. He had arrived prepared to solve a problem with money instead. He found his father defending a waitress. Elena stepped forward now, her voice steady. "Sir, I never meant to cause trouble." Daniel looked at her closely for the first time. There was no greed in her eyes. No request, only concern. "My father says you saved him," Daniel said, the edge in his voice softening slightly. "How?" Harold answered before she could. "She reminded me that I am still someone." The words landed heavier than any accusation. Harold's thin hand reached into the pocket of his robe. He pulled out a folded paper. "She told me something before she almost lost her job," he continued. "She told me that no one who carried others through smoke should ever feel invisible." Daniel's throat tightened. He had not known his father felt invisible in boardrooms. Daniel was praised, admired, feared, but he had not visited often. He had convinced himself that comfort and luxury were enough. He had forgotten that dignity cannot be purchased. Mr. Carter stepped forward, attempting to regain control. "We maintain professional standards here," he said firmly. Daniel turned slowly. "Toward him, professional standards should include respect," he replied, his voice calm but powerful. And in that moment, the power in the room shifted. Daniel was not just a son. He was a man whose investments funded half the city's new developments. He knew donors. He knew board members. He knew how influence worked. But this time, did not speak from pride. He spoke from shame. "If this facility cannot allow simple human kindness," he said quietly, "then perhaps it is time for change." Silence spread like a wave. Residents in wheelchairs had gathered. Nurses stood still. Even the air felt different. Harold watched his son with something close to hope. Daniel stepped closer to Elena. "Thank you for seeing my father when I did not," said. She shook her head gently. "He was never invisible," she answered. "People just forgot to look." That sentence would echo in Daniel's mind for years. Within weeks, the nursing home board announced new policies. Staff were encouraged to spend personal time with residents if they wished. Community volunteers were welcomed. The cafe expanded into a small gathering space filled with books and soft chairs. Mr. Carter quietly resigned. Daniel funded a scholarship in Elena's name for nursing students who worked with the elderly, but the true victory was not financial. It was personal. On a bright afternoon, Harold sat in the courtyard surrounded by other residents. Elena poured tea while laughing softly. Daniel sat beside his father, not checking his phone, not glancing at his watch. Harold looked at his son. "Strength is not loud," he said gently. "It is steady." Daniel nodded. "And sometimes," he added, "the strongest people wear aprons." Around them, a small crowd of residents and staff stood in quiet respect, not because a millionaire had arrived, not because policies had changed, but because dignity had been restored. Harold leaned back, sunlight warming his thin face. For the first time since he had arrived months ago, he did not feel like a patient. He felt like himself. There are battles that never make headlines. Battles against loneliness, against feeling unseen, against the slow fading of identity. Some heroes fight fires, some heroes pour tea, and sometimes the greatest power shift happens not through shouting it, but through quiet honor. If this story moved you, share where you are. Watching from, tell us about someone who showed you kindness when you needed it most. And subscribe for more stories that remind us that silent strength still changes the world, because no one who carried others through smoke should ever feel invisible.